You scroll through your phone, watching people with better bodies, better vacations, and better lives. It stings, leaving you with a quiet, lingering anxiety. You feel like you are somehow falling behind. But for 99% of human history, this infinite digital scoreboard simply did not exist. Your prehistoric ancestors only ever compared themselves to the 30 or 40 people they had known since the day they were born. Today, you compare yourself to millionaires, fitness models, and celebrities. You are playing a game your brain was never designed to handle. Your brain is taking a 300,000-year-old survival instinct and running it through a modern supercomputer of social insecurities. It feels utterly exhausting, because it is literally unnatural. To understand why modern social media hurts so much, we have to go back. We have to travel back to the Pleistocene epoch, long before cities, jobs, or the internet ever existed on this planet. Drop yourself into a prehistoric African savanna. You belong to a small, tightly knit band of early human hunter-gatherers. Dunbar, a cited anthropologist, found that human brains are fundamentally wired to manage a very limited number of social connections. You could maintain stable relationships with maybe 150 people at most. But your daily, intimate survival circle? Just 30 individuals. In this tiny group, you knew everyone's exact strengths and weaknesses. You knew exactly where you stood in the social hierarchy. There was the best tracker, the fastest runner, the most skilled gatherer. You didn't have to be the best at everything. You just had to be useful. If you were only an average runner, you didn't feel deeply depressed or inadequate about it, because the best runner in your tribe was using their incredible skill to hunt and feed you. Their success was your survival. The tribe won together. Today, when a stranger on the internet succeeds, your ancient brain mistakenly perceives it as a threat. It feels like a threat to your own status. But in the Stone Age, status wasn't about hoarding wealth or looking perfect. It was entirely about reputation, generosity, and trust. In fact, trying to rise too high above everyone else was incredibly dangerous. So, why do we feel envy at all? Why couldn't evolution just wire us to be endlessly happy for other people's success? Because envy wasn't a character flaw for your ancestors. It was a vital, life-saving alarm bell ringing in your nervous system. Imagine a severe winter during the Ice Age. The wind is howling, the temperature drops, and local resources are dangerously scarce. If one person in your band decides to secretly hoard all the food, the rest of the tribe will slowly starve. Social comparison theory, proposed by researchers in the 1950s, suggests we have an innate drive to evaluate our own standing. In a prehistoric tribe, comparing yourself to others was the only way to monitor fairness and ensure your own survival. If you noticed someone constantly getting a larger share of the meat, that sharp pang of jealousy told you to speak up. If you didn't speak up, you risked dying. Envy kept the group strictly egalitarian by preventing anyone from taking too much. It was a ruthless mechanism to prevent early dictators from taking over. It ensured you got your fair share of calories. But today, that exact same alarm bell rings when you see someone buy a luxury car or a mansion on social media. Your prehistoric brain panics, genuinely believing that you are losing access to vital resources within your small community. This happens even if your own fridge is completely full and you are perfectly safe in a climate-controlled room. The biological hardware is ancient, but the environment is entirely alien. So, how did they deal with arrogance back then? Anthropologists studying modern forager groups discovered a fascinating, almost brutal social tool used to keep egos in check: Field researcher Richard Lee spent years living with the Juhansi people of the harsh Kalahari Desert, observing their daily lives. He noticed something strange. When a skilled hunter brought back a massive, beautiful kill to feed the entire camp, the rest of the tribe did not praise him. They did not celebrate his achievement. Instead, they actively mocked him. They would call the meat worthless, skinny, or barely edible. They acted as if he had brought back absolute garbage. Why insult the very person keeping them alive? Anthropologists call this practice insulting the meat, a leveling mechanism. Researcher Christopher Boehm noted that hunter-gatherers universally use this tactic to completely prevent arrogance and dominance. If a hunter is praised too much, his ego swells. He might begin to believe he is genuinely superior to others. Superiority eventually leads to dominance. And dominance destroys the fragile, cooperative egalitarian structure of the entire tribe. So, they use humor, mockery, and social pressure to shrink his ego safely back to a normal, manageable size. The hunter understands the game. He plays along, apologizing humbly for the terrible food he has provided. It is a brilliant, ruthless, and highly effective system designed to maintain absolute equality over hundreds of generations. No bosses. No kings. No one allowed to hoard power or feel inherently better than anyone else. For 300,000 years, your ancestors kept the scoreboard flat. If you got too far ahead, the group pulled you back. But then, about 12,000 years ago, the entire world changed forever. Humans invented agriculture. With farming came permanent settlements. With settlements came grain silos, surplus food, and the concept of personal property. And for the first time in human existence, someone was allowed to keep more than their fair share without being punished. The leveling mechanisms broke. The scoreboard shattered. Some people became incredibly wealthy, while others became destitute. Populations exploded from bands of 30 to villages of hundreds, then to cities of millions. Your brain, finely tuned for a tiny egalitarian tribe, was suddenly thrust into a massive, highly stratified hierarchy. In a village of 30, you didn't have to be the most beautiful or the most successful. You were valued by default. But in a city of millions, you are a tiny fish in an impossibly massive ocean, surrounded by strangers. And then, the internet came along and took this mismatch to a completely devastating new extreme. Social media creates the illusion of a global tribe, tricking your ancient hardware into constantly monitoring millions of people. You are no longer comparing yourself to the slightly better runner in your camp. You are competing with the entire world. Psychologists note that social media heavily skews toward upward comparison. You only see the absolute top 1%. You see the wealthiest, the most attractive, the most successful people, carefully curated and filtered for your screen. Your brain processes this not as entertainment, but as a critical survival report about your own status in the tribe. It looks at these millions of hyper-successful strangers and concludes, we are at the very bottom. We are in danger. And in the deep history of our species, being at the bottom of the social hierarchy was basically a death sentence. With the rapid rise of agriculture and vast ancient cities, the intimate 30-person survival band vanished completely forever. You are no longer surrounded by a few dozen familiar faces. You are dropped into a rigid hierarchy of thousands, then millions. But your brain did not get a software update. It still runs the exact same code as a Pleistocene hunter-gatherer. In a small tribe, your status was stable. You knew your value, and you knew exactly where you stood. In a massive city, Your brain is completely overwhelmed by the sheer number of people to compare against. It frantically tries to figure out exactly where you stand in this giant, unforgiving, unnatural modern social ladder. Everywhere you look, someone is richer, faster, or smarter. The old prehistoric leveling mechanism is completely and permanently broken. Evolutionary biologists call this a mismatch. A mental alarm system that kept your ancestors alive in the wilderness. Now causes you immense, paralyzing suffering while you sit perfectly safe and warm inside a comfortable modern apartment. But cities were just the beginning. The real crisis for your ancient nervous system began in the last 2 decades. It started abruptly with the invention of the modern smartphone and the endless, addictive scroll of social media. It acts as a digital window that forces your brain to look at the entire planet at once. You pull your phone out of your pocket, tired after a long day of work, just looking for a distraction. And instantly, the manageable 30-person village is violently replaced by a massive, overwhelming global digital arena of strangers. Your ancient, finely tuned jealousy alarm is about to be hijacked in the absolute worst possible way imaginable. When you open a feed full of influencers and celebrities, you know intellectually that these are distant strangers. But your primitive brain does not understand what a digital screen is. It only knows what it sees. To your nervous system, every single face you see on that screen is a member of your immediate survival tribe. Psychologist Jean Twenge has documented how the rise of this specific technology runs parallel to a massive spike in modern anxiety. Because your brain is desperately trying to rank your social standing against 1 billion people. In a prehistoric band of 30, being perfectly average was absolutely fine. It was safe. You didn't have to be the ultimate hunter to get a share of the meat or a warm spot by the fire. But on the internet, average does not go viral. Average does not get shown to you on a curated feed. The algorithm only feeds you the absolute extremes of human success, wealth, and physical beauty. You see 20-year-old millionaires, perfect fitness models, and endless luxury, day after day. Your brain processes this highly artificial, filtered feed as your new local reality. It looks around this digital village, compares your life to the billionaires, and concludes one terrifying thing. It tells you everyone here is superior. You are at the absolute bottom of the pack. And so, it hits the biological panic button. Cortisol floods your system. You feel a deep, stinging inadequacy, even if your actual life is completely fine. In psychology, this brutal phenomenon is known as extreme upward social comparison. An early theory outlined the danger of comparing yourself to those who are slightly better off. But social media forces you to compare your messy, behind-the-scenes reality with everyone else's curated highlight reel. You are comparing your exhausting Tuesday morning commute to a filtered, sponsored vacation in Bali. In the ancestral environment, if a fellow tribe member was incredibly successful, it usually benefited you directly. The great hunter gave you food. Their high status meant you had a better chance of surviving the winter. But the wealthy influencer on your screen is not sharing their resources with you. They are displaying extreme abundance and triggering your ancient inequality alarms without providing any survival benefit. Your brain detects a hoarder who is taking all the status and resources of the digital tribe. It desperately wants to use the old egalitarian leveling mechanisms. It wants to insult the meat. This prehistoric instinct explains why modern internet comment sections are often so incredibly toxic and aggressive. People tearing down celebrities or influencers is just a digital, misguided version of prehistoric leveling. It is an instinctual attempt to pull dominant, arrogant figures back down to earth to ensure group equality. But it doesn't work. The influencer cannot hear you. The hierarchy remains rigid and untouchable. So the stress and envy just sit locked inside your body, with absolutely nowhere to go. Why does this modern anxiety physically hurt? Why does FOMO feel like a tight chest and a racing heart? Because to your ancient ancestors, social rejection was not just a sad feeling. It was lethal. If you fell to the absolute bottom of a prehistoric tribe's hierarchy, you became expendable. In times of severe famine, the least valued members of the group were often the first to starve. And if you were fully ostracized and kicked out of the band entirely, you were forced to face the Ice Age wilderness alone, which meant certain, undeniable death. To prevent this, evolution wired the pain of social rejection to the exact same neural pathways as physical pain. Neurologically speaking, a bruised social ego and a broken bone are processed in very similar regions of your brain. When you see a post that makes you feel inferior, your brain genuinely believes you are being pushed out of the tribe. It triggers a massive fight-or-flight response, flooding you with adrenaline to force you back into the group's good graces. Your modern eyes see a wealthy teenager lounging on a luxury yacht, but your ancient brain sees a hungry winter, total isolation, and a slow death in the freezing snow. You are fighting a phantom predator, a monster created entirely by pixels and code. The social threat isn't real. You are perfectly safe. But the cortisol pumping through your veins absolutely is. And over time, this chronic, never-ending false alarm begins to break your physical body down. So, what do you do with this information? How do you live with a brain that constantly tortures you with impossible comparisons? The first step is profound, radical forgiveness. You have to stop blaming yourself for feeling anxious, jealous, or inadequate. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are simply operating a highly successful piece of prehistoric hardware in the wrong environment. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do, keeping you securely integrated into your local survival band. It just doesn't realize that the band it sees on your phone is a carefully engineered illusion designed to steal your attention. Anthropologists point out that forager societies did not live in a state of constant ambition or endless accumulation. They worked for what they immediately needed, shared it, and then rested. They experienced genuine affluence without abundance. They were content because the finish line was fixed. Today, the finish line is pushed further away every time you open an app. If you want to quiet the ancient alarm bells in your head, you have to actively shrink your world back down to size. You have to intentionally disconnect from the global arena of millions and refocus on your own physical, immediate reality. Look at the actual people in your daily life. Your family, your close friends, the people you see face to face. That is your actual tribe. That is the only scoreboard your biology is realistically equipped to process and understand. When you compare yourself only to your real, immediate community, the overwhelming pressure of global perfection begins to evaporate. You don't need to be a billionaire or a flawless model to be a valued, loved, and necessary member of a human group. You just need to be present. You just need to be useful to the people who are actually standing right next to you. Because true status, the kind that actually keeps you alive and happy, has never been about accumulating the most wealth. For 300,000 years, true status was measured purely by your generosity, your cooperation, and your connection to your local band. Modern civilization gave us medicine, grocery stores, and the internet. It saved us from predators and the freezing cold. But it also stripped away the psychological safety net of the egalitarian tribe, leaving you to fend for yourself. It is a heavy trade-off. We traded the daily threat of physical starvation for the constant ache of social inadequacy. You cannot change the modern world. You cannot destroy the digital hierarchies or turn off the infinite scroll of society, but you can change how you interpret the signals in your own body. You can recognize the panic for what it truly is. It is just a ghost. An ancient echo from the Ice Age, warning you about a winter that is never going to come. You are safe. You have enough. The relentless drive to be better than everyone else is a trap you can step out of. Take a deep breath. Let the artificial pressure of the global hierarchy wash over you without letting it dictate your self-worth. You scroll through your phone, watching people with better bodies, better vacations, and better lives. You see the millions of strangers living curated, filtered realities that look utterly perfect and completely unattainable. It used to sting, leaving you with a quiet, lingering anxiety that you were somehow falling irreparably behind in life. But this time, it doesn't hurt. You look at the screen, and you simply smile at the absurdity of it all, because you finally realize you aren't falling behind. You are just a Pleistocene survivor, navigating a game you were never meant to play.